Surrendered guardianship of my brother, defying my mom's lifetime expectations and reclaiming my life from her suffocating control. My mom has expected me to become my older brother's guardian for as long as I can remember. She's devoted nearly every aspect of her adult life to him, her career, her time, her entire identity became entwined with his care. Because of his needs, she became an expert in services and policy for people with disabilities. She learned how to move mountains, fighting for large budgets, the highest level of care, and every resource you can imagine. Although, the best care is always up for debate when the needs are as profound as his, he has severe autism, intellectual disability, a seizure disorder, and all of the added layers: sleep disturbances, soiling, violent outbursts that have left people, including me, hurt. My brother's care is a revolving door every staff member quits. He talks but his words are only repetitive phrases, echolalia, not true communication. Growing up, the hurt he caused me physically and emotionally was outpaced only by the neglect that came from being in his shadow. No, childhood is an understatement. I became invisible, raising myself, pressured to be perfect at all times. Actual parenting from my mom was absent, she was simply never available. Unsurprisingly, I wound up with gifted child syndrome, probably undiagnosed ADHD too, my personality shaped entirely by surviving my environment. I became the good sister by default, volunteering at autism organizations, visiting my brother in his various group homes, always with my mom, and remaining silent as she told the world I'd take care of him someday. I kept biting my tongue. As her career shifted, she decided my brother would be the model of self-directed care. In practice, for my brother, that meant total control in my mother's hands, his own home, all one staff directly managed by her, his doctors, every schedule, every appointment, every ounce of paperwork. She dove into every branch of the overwhelming disability service oversight, becoming his project manager, 24/7. Even with a full-time job, she spends at least 60 minutes, 80 hours a week piecing together the behemoth of his care. What people don't tell you is self-directed care is not designed for someone as disabled as my brother. It's meant for people who can, with some help, live mostly independently. In reality, my brother's self-direction is just my mother's iron grip over every part of his life. She shops for him, waits at the food bank, books all his doctors, coordinates activities, handles the endless paperwork, and manages crises every week. And now she's almost 70, with her own health issues. Recently, a medical scare rocked us. My brother is okay, but as I juggled the non-stop emails of labs and daily reports from my mom, reality hit me. I was done. For years, I pretended I could and would become his guardian forever. I ignored the annual emails, court docs, and let her write the reports I signed for more than a decade, when, in truth, I did nothing because I cannot do anything. I have a husband, a house, 4 children, a full career. Most days, I can't even find time to go to the dentist for myself. Yet, somewhere in my mother's mind, there exists this fantasy of me becoming her, the full-time manager of everything, for my brother, forever. Then came the new plan for his care, the one she sent me, saying his near-term goal was to move to a group home closer to my sister. I had no idea this was ever discussed. She just assumed he would follow me, anchoring my family and my life, despite what I want for my own future. When I was 18, she pressured me into becoming his standby guardian. A few months after high school, I stood before a judge, gritting my teeth as I said, "Yes, I do it." Later, following another health scare of hers, she pressed further co-guardian, she said. But even then, I knew it didn't have to be forever. That decision was made under pressure, not out of any genuine desire. And I finally see how nothing in my brother's life will ever change as long as I am always listed as backup, keeping the system on life support. Taking this on, even in theory, would destroy my life and my family, a life I worked hard to love and that is okay to say. I have never wanted this. Maybe that makes me a bad person. But I finally realized I can say no. I'm not leaving my brother, he will always be my family. I just can't be his legal and administrative caretaker. I can't sacrifice the life I painstakingly built just to step into a role that isn't mine. My mother was an amazing advocate for my brother, but not for me. Not even close. She abused me emotionally, even physically. She was controlling, belittling, throwing my belongings, yelling, calling me an ungrateful little bitch. I was parentified, enmeshed, and roped into every aspect of my brother's care until adulthood. Young adulthood didn't offer much freedom, either. My inheritance was funneled into a house for my brother that, by design, I was supposed to share with him. I endured years of my mom barging in at will, holding her key, criticizing me and the staff, one of whom sexually harassed me. I once adopted a 15-pound miniature poodle. My mother called the police, claiming my dog was threatening a vulnerable adult. She canceled my car and health insurance with no warning. For 3 years, I lived with my brother under this kind of siege. After I finally met my husband, she escalated. Threatening lawsuits, sending disgusting messages, even posing as my brother in emails, insinuating horrible things about me. She spread rumors to our extended family that my husband was a pedophile or a terrorist, all because I finally put space between me and her orbit. I stopped being her perfect model of a daughter and sister. Now, I have my own life. My husband loves me. My children are my world. But even now, she refuses to see my stepkids as part of the family. She actively excludes them, doesn't buy them holiday gifts, doesn't list them as part of her or my brother's family in legal documents. My 2 biological kids, she claims, are the only ones who count. The stepchildren, who have been with me since toddlerhood and are with us half the time, are treated as invisible. Everything I've told is only the tip of the iceberg, but it paints the picture. My brother technically lives in his own home, but the reality is, the next goal is a group home, something that's happened before. And I am so sorry for anyone else who has lived with these suffocating expectations. I finally called it, I am out. I don't have to be my brother's guardian, and neither does anyone else who never asked for this role. Update 1. First of all, I want to thank everyone who has supported me. It was unexpected but incredibly validating, and it left me with a feeling that I finally found my people. That's helped shed so much of the guilt I was carrying. This morning, I sat down with my mom to tell her that I am officially resigning. I honestly wasn't sure if she'd react with anger, sadness, or something in between. As it turned out, it was a blend, sadness laced with a rising panic as she started to process what I was saying. Even before I opened my mouth, she launched right in, detailing how exhausting caring for my brother has become for her. The dining room table, she complained, is suffocating under a mountain of paperwork. His staff are unreliable. The system, she admitted freely, is utterly unmanageable, and in her own words, she simply can't do it anymore. It felt like the perfect moment to say what I'd come for. So I told her, that's exactly why I wanted to meet today, actually, and started it on the speech I'd prepared for weeks. But she interrupted me, a note of desperation coloring her words. But wait. Can I please just tell you what the plan is? I took a breath and let her continue. She all but exploded into her new master plan. According to her, my brother absolutely needs to move into a group home. But not just any group home, a home closer to me. That, she insisted, would make things so much easier. The agency would run everything. She'd get him into a better agency, she was certain. There were 2 residential homes practically around my corner, she told me, and they were good ones. That's when I had to cut her off. Okay, I need to stop you. That plan, it doesn't work for me. It doesn't make anything easier. Yes it does, she shot back. I asked her, how does him moving closer to me make any of this easier? And that was my opening to finally lay it all out. I told her plainly, I am not able to be his guardian now or in the future. I am resigning. That's when it felt like her mind almost couldn't compute what I was saying. She started talking faster, her voice climbing higher. Please don't do this, she said, over and over. Please don't do this. It's not what's best for your brother. She swung between those pleas in a kind of frantic bargaining. You don't understand. You don't understand. It's going to be easier. I'm fixing it. I've hired an amazing attorney. He's going to do everything. There will be a support broker. Everything will be done. It's going to be so easy for you. I have thought about this. I know you have 4 kids. But I have a plan. Update. Chew. I submitted all of the documents to the court, making my position perfectly clear. I'm resigning as co-guardian because I am unable to fulfill the duties required by this role due to my personal and professional obligations. I also recommended that my mom be made the sole guardian by default. My mom hasn't reached out to me at all since our intense meeting 2 weeks ago, not a single word or message. Then, out of the blue, I received a copy of her version of my brother's annual report, the one she filed with the court. For anyone unfamiliar, most guardianships require an annual report outlining where the disabled person is living, their medical conditions, and any major events or changes in their life over the last year. Apparently, my mom saw this as her moment to set the record straight and, as it turns out, try to completely assassinate my character. I'm left wondering, to whom, exactly, is she appealing? The court is interested in one thing: whether my brother, the person with a disability, is safe and properly cared for. Thinking back to the conversation we had, I remember spelling out every detail as calmly and clearly as I could, despite being nervous. My voice was steady, unwavering, while she was nearly yelling at me right there in the middle of a busy calf. And now, seeing her interpretation of what happened, I couldn't help but shake my head. The words jumped off the page, her version, largely verbatim, stripped of any personal identifiers. The contrast between our experience is the raw nerve of being attacked, versus the steady resolve to do what's best for my brother has never felt sharper. Update 3. Following my brother's guardianship hearing, I felt compelled to share how things unfolded. Honestly, it was a very dull affair compared to the emotional lead-up, but nonetheless, an important milestone. As I anticipated, even with all of my mom's endless filings and her efforts to create drama and call attention to the proceedings, the hearing itself was completely procedural. In fact, it lasted less than 3 minutes and took place over Zoom. The court had appointed an attorney to represent my brother. The attorney simply stated that the petition for my resignation as co-guardian was unopposed. The judge affirmed that my mom would continue as sole guardian, and that, too, was unopposed. My role that day was minimal. I stated my name, confirmed my intention to resign, and that was the end of my involvement. There was no need for me to hire an attorney. Not a single word was spoken about the dramatic accusations or grievances my mother had detailed in her annual guardianship report. All the drama she'd tried to create irrelevant. For the past 2 months, I've been no contact with my mother. Navigating this guardianship situation forced me to take a hard look at the history between me and my mom, and it truly opened my eyes. In addition to the classic glass child struggles during my upbringing, I've come to believe my mother suffers from a personality disorder, though, of course, I can't give a diagnosis. My childhood and young adulthood were deeply traumatic for many reasons. For most of my life, guilt tied to my brother kept me clinging to some semblance of a relationship with her, but I finally released myself from that burden. The truth is, I do not have the capacity to care for my brother long term, and, looking back, it's clear I was never actually asked to. It was always simply assumed or demanded by my mom. I love my brother deeply and I want the best for him, but I am not the person who can manage his care for the rest of his life. What saddens me most is the reality that as long as my mom is involved, it's impossible to have any kind of relationship with my brother. She is just not a safe or healthy person for either myself or my own family. She never has been. At long last, I'm ready to live my life free from all of this, and the relief I feel is immense. My hope is that sharing this journey might help other glass children out there realize they don't have to remain chained by guilt or other people's expectations. Update 4. An unknown number lit up my phone at 6:12 am. It was a hospital social worker, speaking quickly, apologizing for the hour. My brother had been brought in from his day program after a prolonged seizure. He was stable, but they couldn't reach his guardian. "You're listed as alternate," she said, reading my name off a screen I could hear her scrolling through. I told her the truth, I'm not. I resigned and the order is signed. She was kind and efficient and didn't push, just asked if I could confirm basics while they tracked down the right person. Medications. Triggers. Baseline behavior. I gave what I could without stepping back into a role I'd finally stepped out of. I said the exact words I keep taped to my desk: "I am not his guardian, but I am his sister, and here is what I know." By noon, the service coordinator called. They'd found my mom. She had been admitted to the same hospital overnight hypertensive emergency. That meant no one was answering anything for my brother's care. Overnight staff had called out. Day shift never showed. The agency pulled the fire alarm on the whole self-directed setup and invoked their emergency plan. He was being moved to a crisis respite home today. I didn't know those existed like that, ready on a dime. A van arrived before dinner. They packed his familiar things, and a rush. He repeated the same phrase under his breath the whole time, 3 words he's used since we were kids, and I stood in my kitchen gripping the edge of the counter while the service coordinator talked me through the logistics like I was a colleague, not family. Address. Admission time. A temporary on-call medical proxy through the agency. A public guardian petition, filed before close of business. At 7 p.m. I drove over with a small bag and no plan to see him. Just practical things that make his world softer. The respite house was bright and loud in the way these places always are at shift change. A staff member with the tired eyes of someone good at their job met me at the door. She thanked me like I'd delivered something priceless. Then, almost as an afterthought, she said, "By the way, we had to unplug all the cameras they found in his old place. Legal's handling it." Cameras. Plural. Hidden, she said, in places nobody would notice. Bathroom. Bedroom. Common area. "We don't know if anything was ever recording," she added quickly, gentle, like she understood exactly what that sentence would do to me. "But we needed you to know we're documenting it." I sat in my car, engine off, fingers ice cold on the steering wheel while my brain tried to make peace with that one sentence and everything it confirmed. The next morning, There was a Zoom link in my inbox with a subject line I could have recited in my sleep: Emergency Guardianship Review. I hadn't been noticed as a party, I was on there as a potential witness and a person with relevant familial information. The county's public guardian petitioned to be appointed on a temporary basis, pending a longer hearing. The service agency filed affidavits about unsafe staffing gaps and unauthorized monitoring equipment. It was not drama, it was facts, dates, timestamps. My mom appeared from a hospital bed, hair flattened, paper bracelet visible, and launched straight into it, talking over the public guardian, over the judge, trying to reframe it all as a misunderstanding, as advocacy, as her right. The judge was patient until he wasn't. He reminded her, twice, that this wasn't about her. When she kept going, he cut the line of argument off with a firmness I have only ever wished someone would use on my behalf. You are not to interfere with agency operations or enter any residence uninvited. Do you understand? She said something about conspiracies. He appointed the public guardian for 90 days. They only asked me one question. Could I confirm I'd resigned and that I was not seeking appointment now or in the future? Yes. That was the extent of my role. After the hearing, the public guardian called me directly. His voice was calm, seasoned by 1,000 versions of families at cross purposes with the people they love. He told me my brother would be evaluated for a high acuity placement, the kind of home that actually staffs for the severity of his needs, not the fantasy version where one person can do it all. He said they prefer family to be family, that if, down the line, I wanted to see my brother in a structured visit, they'd support it. No pressure. No ticking clock. He said the magic sentence: you don't have to manage anything. You can just be a sister. That night, the respite staff FaceTimed me without warning and angled the screen so I could see the side of my brother's head, headphones on, a familiar old hoodie on his shoulders that I hadn't seen in years. He was stimming with his fingers, calm, repeating his 3 words, and I said his name and he turned just for a second, like a bird looking up, and then went back to his loop. I didn't cry until after I hung up. 2 days into the public guardian's appointment, an investigator from the oversight office reached out about the cameras. Policy violations. Potential privacy infractions. I answered what I could, and when they veered into the history, the why of it, I said the most honest thing I've ever said about my family: I can't explain her to you. I can only tell you what happened in front of me. My mom, for her part, sent me a certified letter from the hospital, complete with legal letterhead from an attorney I'm 90% sure is made up. A cease and desist accusing me of orchestrating a hostile takeover of my brother's care. It would have rattled me a year ago. I put it back in the envelope and slid it into a drawer I don't open often. Here's the strangest part, the part I didn't expect: the system did what it was supposed to do when I got out of the way. People whose actual job this is stepped in. The machine didn't collapse without me propping it up with my guilt. I don't know where my brother will land yet. The respite house is just that, temporary. A spot open for a tour at a facility that doesn't pretend he's self-directing anything. The public guardian said he'll handle the wait lists, the med reconciliations, the consents. If he wants me there for the tour, he'll ask. If I can't go, the world won't burn down. I left another bag at the respite house this morning and wrote my brother's name on the tag in thick black marker, the way I used to label my own things as a kid so they wouldn't get swallowed by someone else's mess. Walking back to my car, I realized I wasn't bracing for my mother to appear around a corner. I wasn't bracing for anything. For the first time, the future didn't feel like a sentence. It felt like a set of choices I could make, one at a time, with both hands free. Update 5. 2 days after the hearing, my phone pinged while I was driving a bag of familiar things to the respite house. An alert lit up the screen: AirTag found moving with you. I pulled into the nearest grocery store lot and sat there with my hazards blinking, watching the dot on the map move exactly where I was moving. I dumped the bag out onto the passenger seat hoodie, noise-canceling headphones, a stack of laminated packs from forever ago, and felt for anything hard sewn where it shouldn't be. It took me an embarrassing amount of time to notice the tag hidden under the seam of the backpack strap, tucked behind the little square of fabric that tells you what the bag is made of. The stitching was neat. Professional. At intake, the staff didn't flinch. They photographed it. Labeled it. Logged it. We're documenting it, the supervisor said, and the déjà vu of that sentence hit me like a second heartbeat. She asked if she could keep the bag to check again with a UV flashlight. I drove away with my palms sweating and the windows down, even though it was cold. The public guardian called that afternoon to tell me they'd added no surveillance devices, no tracking, no uninvited entry to the temporary order. It sounds obvious, he said, voice steady, but we've learned to make obvious things explicit. He didn't ask me to testify. He didn't need me to do anything except pick up if I wanted to. A bed open for a tour at a high acuity home 40 minutes from me. Quiet cul-de-sac, overbuilt ranch that looked normal from the street and entirely different once you stepped in. Rounded corners. Reinforced windows you wouldn't notice unless you knew to look. There was a bubble chair in the den rocking on a slow hydraulic like a heartbeat. The house manager introduced himself with simple eye contact and no forced small talk. "We do 2-to-1 as baseline," he said. 3-to-1 by plan when behavior spikes. Nursing in-house. We write the plans to the person, not the other way around. In the middle of the tour, someone in the back hallway started shouting a string of syllables with no words in it and all the meaning in the world if you've lived in these spaces. A door banged. No one ran. 2 staff did what looked like a choreographed dance I'd never learned, blocking, redirecting, breathing, quiet hands. It wasn't glossy. It was real. No one looked to me for instruction or apology. I stood there with my coat folded over my arms and realized I didn't know where to put my hands anymore when I wasn't bracing to be hit. They asked if I could write anything useful on their About Me sheet while the public guardian handled consents. I wrote 3 lines. Favorite snack? The song that calms him in elevators. The 3 words he repeats when he's overwhelmed. I kept my handwriting large and spaced out because someone would have to read it quickly, maybe in a hallway like the one we'd just heard. That night, my phone surfaced another unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. The public guardian followed it with a text, "No action needed. Agency aware of calls. We've handled it." My shoulders dropped before I even realized I'd been holding them up around my ears all day. The oversight investigator emailed to say their office had taken custody of the devices from the old house plural. "We won't be sharing specifics during an active investigation," she said, which is the most comforting sentence once you finally understand that specifics were never your job. She did ask one thing: had I ever consented to being recorded in my brother's home? No. 2 mornings later, the court set a status conference. My mother logged in from her kitchen this time, not the hospital, hair brushed and chin up. She tried to wedge the word advocacy into every sentence like it was a spell. The judge didn't bite. He extended the temporary appointment for the full 90 days and issued a separate order: no entry without permission, no contact with direct care staff outside established channels, no tampering with agency equipment. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. "This is not punishment," he said evenly. "This is to protect Mr. Redacted's privacy and safety." The respite staff called and asked if I wanted to be there for a structured visit. "We can set it up so he doesn't have to choose," the supervisor said. "You can be in his space without changing his routine." I said yes and then immediately wished I'd sensed something more gracious, like thanks. On the day, they put us in a low-stem room with a bean bag that swallows you if you aren't careful. He came in sideways, the way he always does, orbit first, then approach. He clocked me, turned his head like that small bird again, and reached without looking to press 2 fingers at it into the sleeve of my sweater exactly where my wrist bone makes a bump. 4 seconds, maybe 5. I counted, because I needed to count something. He went back to his loop like we'd pressed pause and unpaused, and I sat there with my hands open on my knees so he'd know there was nothing to take from me and nothing to fend off. The staff had his oldest playlist going low. The song we used for Elevator slid in on the 3rd track, and I swear I saw his shoulders lower a millimeter, like he remembered that his nervous system could have downshifts. When I left, the house manager walked me out and said, "Visit again next week if you want." He didn't put a frequency on it. He didn't hand me a chore list disguised as family involvement. In the driveway, I booked a dentist appointment from my phone because the last time I did that, I had to cancel for a crisis that wasn't supposed to be mine. My mother sent a handwritten letter on thick cream stationery to my workplace, in case I'd been missing the email she continues to send from rotating accounts. It said my name like she was tasting it for poison. It accused me of being coached, manipulated, brainwashed. I slid it back in the envelope and filed it under "We've documented it," which now lives in a literal folder in a fireproof box. The public guardian told me to keep doing exactly that. "You're not ignoring her," he said. "You're declining to engage. There's a difference." The call that surprised me came from the fiscal intermediary for his self-directed budget. Calm voice. "What a tone. We're conducting a routine reconciliation of timesheets and expenditures related to Mr. Redacted," she said. "Can you confirm you did not approve any staff hours or equipment purchases in the last 12 months? I confirmed. She thanked me and said, "We'll follow up with the guardian." The sinking feeling in my stomach wasn't new, but the part where it wasn't mine to fix that was new. Today, the respite supervisor texted me a picture without phrases. Just a hand and a hoodie cuff and a familiar corner of a puzzle mat. "Good day," she wrote. 2 words. No exclamation points. I saved it and then, for once, didn't build a story out of it. The hood was good. On my way home, I drove past a park I never noticed because I'm always taking the fastest route between other people's emergencies. I pulled in and watched my youngest on the swing while my stepdaughter taught her how to jump. My phone vibrated with an email from the public guardian confirming the tour date for the high acuity home and a line at the end that felt like a permission slip I didn't know I needed. We've got the logistics. You just show up or don't, whatever is best for you. I turned my phone face down on the bench. Nothing exploded. The sky did what skies do at 5 o'clock in early spring, pinked at the edges and then softened. For the first time, visiting my brother felt like something I could choose on purpose, not something I was sprinting toward to keep the rest of my life from collapsing. Update 6. Move-in assessments always sound like something gentle, like you're picking curtains. In reality, it was 3 hours of controlled chaos that somehow never tipped. The high acuity home sent their nurse and behaviorist to the respite house to meet him where he was. They didn't ask me to prep him. They didn't ask me to do anything. I stood by the door with a paper cup of water I didn't drink while the nurse spoke to him in phrases pared down to bone. Shoes. Hoodity. Our. The behaviorist mirrored his hand flaps with the smallest movement I've ever seen from a human who wasn't trying to make themselves invisible. He looked at the bubble on her keychain. He said his 3 words and they didn't write them down like they were collecting butterflies. They nodded and kept the air calm. On the drive over, the van staff had their route set to no surprises. No sirens, no tunnels. He hummed the elevator song without the words, the way he does when his nervous system is proving to itself it's still attached. At the house, they let him walk the hallway twice before showing him his room. He put 2 fingers on the doorframe like he was taking its pulse. The nurse checked his meds with a double sign-off that looked like choreography. When she found a discrepancy in the rescue script, she didn't ask me to call anyone. She texted the public guardian with a photo of the bottle and the exact lot number. We've documented it, she said, and I exhaled for the first time since I parked. An hour later, my phone lit up with fiscal intermediary again. The woman was all clipped kindness. She said they'd completed their reconciliation. She said words like disallowance and recoup and then in pattern. Hours billed overlapping with her admissions. Overnight shifts for staff who'd been terminated months earlier. Equipment coded as safety items that mapped exactly to the models of cameras the oversight office had boxed up. She was careful with me in that voice you get when you understand the person on the other end has spent a lifetime being turned into an unpaid investigator. We've referred it out, she said, by which she meant Medicaid fraud control. No action required from you. The oversight investigator sent a brief email that said they'd recovered a router tucked into a ceiling tile and a microSD card inside a shampoo bottle cap. I stared at that sentence until the words entangled and then tangled again. She asked if he'd ever had an in-home surveillance consent signed by a prior guardian. He had not. We have it, she wrote. We're securing it. I closed my laptop and went outside and stood on the patch of grass my kids trample into something that's not quite lawn and not quite dirt and let the cold go through my socks. 2 days later, there was a status call in the guardianship matter. The house manager had submitted an affidavit with call logs from staff showing my mother had been contacting them from new numbers, some blocked, some with a pastor's name, some with nothing at all. Voicemails telling them to put cameras back in because the public guardian doesn't care about your safety. The judge asked the same question 3 ways and then a 4th. Are you contacting staff? Are you entering the property? Are you deploying devices? He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He found her in contempt without theatrics and entered a no-contact order that made the previous boundaries look like suggestions. All communication through counsel. No physical entry without permission and a third party present. No direct contact with any vendor or staff. He said one sentence that landed in my rabs like a beam. Your belief that you are the only competent person does not trump Mr. Redacted's right to privacy and dignity. That afternoon, HR at my job forwarded an envelope addressed in her looping schoolteacher handwriting to our main line. They'd already scanned it into the incident folder with a date stamp. They'd already told front desk staff not to accept anything from her by hand. We've documented it, the HR director said, and I realized those words felt like a blanket now, not a threat. The high acuity home called with something I didn't expect this soon, a bed, contingent on a successful overnight. We call it a compatibility stay, the house manager said. We choose him as much as he chooses us. They asked me if I wanted to bring anything he sleeps with. I brought the old hoodie with the frayed cuff and one pillowcase that smells like my laundry and a brand of crackers he will eat dry without gagging if you break them on a seam. I put them on his shelf and nobody acted like I was setting a shrine. Overnight wasn't glossy. He had a partial seizure at 3:08 am. The nurse's note was crisp. Head turret. Right arm tonic. 31 seconds. Rescue was not required. He returned to baseline. They left the blinds open half an inch because he prefers light on waking. They didn't call me at 3:09 am. The summary came at 7:14 am. Attached to an email with the line, "No action needed. We've updated the plan." Between those hours, while I was asleep in a bed I pay for, the public guardian filed the move-in consent. The county emailed a notice of change in living arrangement that read like a form and felt like an earthquake. He was admitted that afternoon. He walked through the front door of a house that looked like nobody's idea of an institution and everyone's idea of a place where the walls have been thought about. A former staffer from the self-directed setup found me through the service agency. She asked the supervisor to ask me if she could talk and then did everything right. Met with the investigator. Gave her statement. She told me she was sorry in the very specific way a person who's been made to do things they knew were wrong apologizes not for the thing itself, which she can't apologize to me for, but for standing in the room while it happened. She said my mother had told them the cameras were court-ordered. She said she believed her because when someone talks in acronyms fast enough, you can drown. I told her I couldn't fix any of it for her. She said she didn't want me to. She just wanted me to know she was telling the truth to the right people now. My mother, pivoting to a new angle, filed something scrawled and unpaginated that the clerk politely labeled motion. They asked to vacate the no-contact order on the grounds that her advocacy is being chilled. The judge denied it on the papers, one line, no hearing, and set a date for a full guardianship review in 90 days out. Counsel to appear, it said, which is the gentle way of saying, come back with a lawyer or don't come back. The House put a photo in the app they use for families. No faces. Just a sleeve and a familiar sliver of puzzle mat in the corner of a laminated first/then strip someone had wiped down until it shone. The caption was a timestamp and the word settled. I saved it without making it mean something bigger than it was. On visit day, they put me in the same low-sin room with the same beanbag that tries to eat you. He made his sideways approach and did the same thing, 2 fingers on the bump of my wrist bone like he was checking where I attached. I counted to 5 without meaning to and then stopped counting because something in me unclenched and I didn't need the numbers to keep me safe anymore. A staffer walked by the door humming the elevator song and he turned his head a fraction. They weren't using it as a trick. It was just part of the air there now. When I left, the house manager walked me out again and said, he's on the overnight list Fridays for the next month. Come or don't. He wasn't daring me to fail. He was making room around me. In the driveway, I booked an orthodontist appointment for my stepdaughter and didn't apologize to anyone I couldn't see. An email from the fiscal intermediary slid in at 4:02 am. Saying the self-directed budget had been suspended pending audit completion and that the employer of record had been removed from the program. It did not say my mother's name. It did not need to. The agency added a line to the respite discharge summary that I didn't know I'd been waiting for: transition complete. No further services required at this level. On the way home, I stopped at the park again. My youngest tried to make a daisy chain out of weeds that aren't daisies and my stepdaughter taught her the knot anyway. My phone buzzed with a new unknown number. I turned it face down on the bench and waited for the buzz to stop. It stopped. The sky did that early evening thing where it goes flat and then turns gold around the edges of every stupid ordinary object. For the first time, moving him wasn't a catastrophe we were surviving. It was a sentence with a period at the end and room for whatever comes next.